Damien Chazelles Whiplash is one of the greatest films of our generation, if not of all time. A character study about a lonely yet driven young drummer who feels he's destined to become one of the greats. We see Miles Teller's Andrew Neiman transform from bright-eyed enthusiastic hard worker to redemption-seeking loner driven purely by anger. So what is it that makes his story, the story of his mentor Terence Fletcher, and the entire story of Whiplash so intriguing? Well, before we answer that, I just want to say that it would really help me out if you could hit like, and if you're new here, make sure to subscribe with notifications on, because YouTube doesn't like showing my videos. And with that being said, let's get into Whiplash and the art of obsession.
Alright gang, Whiplash.
The story of Andrew Neiman is one of redemption, and one of tragedy. Our first sight of this freshman is him alone in a grimy room with a single light covering the only other thing that matters to Andrew, a drum kit. This room, for all intents and purposes, is Neiman's entire world, and so, when renowned conductor Terence Fletcher enters this world, we see immediately the desperation and innocence of this 19-year-old in comparison to Fletcher.
Then why did you stop playing? Did I ask you to start playing again?
Sorry,
I asked why
misunderstood.
you stopped playing, and your version of an answer was to turn into a wind-up monkey.
A boy, clothed in white, covered in near angelic light, sits in stark contrast with the black-laden, shadowy and intimidating presence of Fletcher. After a couple of scenes establishing Andrew's isolation from the outside world, by use of masterful visual storytelling from Damien Chazelles and cinematographer Sharon Meyer, Andrew gets supposedly lucky, being handpicked out of the amateur, slow-paced Nassau band, to be placed into Fletcher's studio band. So why is it that Andrew gets picked over everyone else? Well, it's not necessarily because he's the best musician. After all, it's made clear by the conductor that Neiman is behind the rest of the band. No, it's instead because of his love, his obsession with drumming. Andrew isn't actually behind the Nassau band. He's just simply ignoring their uninteresting charts to focus on more complex work. And it's this trait, to strive after what will make him truly great, make him better, that gets him picked for studio band, and acts as a catalyst for his downfall. This downfall is signified by some very subtle but very vital visual storytelling, starting with Andrew's clothing. Starting off with a $3 ice white v-neck, Neiman's clothing becomes progressively darker, progressively more worn down, representative of his mental state as his time in the band goes on. And this gradual change in tone begins as soon as he is picked, with a baby blue shirt being the image of both his fresh start and his innocence, something that's swiftly destroyed by Fletcher over the following scene.
Why do you suppose I just hurled a chair at your head, Neiman?
I don't know.
Sure you do.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Now, was I rushing or was I dragging?
No.
Count again.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 4.
Rushing or dragging?
Rushing.
So you do know the difference. Now, are you a rusher or are you a dragger? Or are you going to be on my fucking time? You are a worthless, friendless, faggot-lipped little piece of shit whose mommy left daddy when she figured out he wasn't Eugene O'Neill, and who is now weeping and slobbering all over my drum set like a fucking 9-year-old girl. So for the final father-fucking time, say it louder! I'm upset!
Another way Chazelles masterfully utilizes colour to communicate the inner workings of Neiman's mind is with the lighting and set design. Whilst from the offset the studio band room is coated in warm gold and brown hues, a colour scheme that carries over to the finale, nearly every other scene is washed out with murky, faded greens and icy blues, truly establishing Andrew's perspective on the world, a disgusting place without the beauty of jazz. The connection between Andrew and his drums is further anchored by the incredibly edited and directed musical numbers, which involve some of the most gorgeously dynamic and kinetic camera work in the whole of cinema, an achievement that earned editor Tom Cross an Oscar. When these scenes focus on Andrew though, almost every shot that includes him is an extreme close-up, intermatched with extreme close-ups of the drums themselves, creating an intimate connection between the two for the audience, as they almost merge into one single entity of incredible jazz. As Neiman's story moves on, his obsession with becoming one of the greatest drummers grows exponentially, initially off the back of his love for the art, but progressively fueled by a hatred, both for himself and for the world. Whether it be him losing his core spot in the band, being forced to break up with his girlfriend to pursue greatness, or him being overshadowed by a Div 3 football star cousin, despite him being the top drummer in the best music school in the country. And that's where Fletcher comes in. It's been debated over and over whether Terence Fletcher is the villain of Whiplash or a misguided anti-hero who simply wants the best for his students. Personally, I see him as the latter. And although it's through manipulation and harassment, Andrew takes it in, not bowing down, not being discouraged, but instead continuing to drive and work, setting him apart from the mediocre masses. He literally puts his blood, sweat, and tears into becoming the greatest, and Fletcher only helps him in that way. But eventually it becomes too much. After spending hours on end practicing and working to earn the role of core drummer, Andrew shows up late to a competition. Now donned in near completely dark colours, with bags under his eyes, we now see what his obsession has led him to.
Sorry I'm late, but I'm here, I'm ready to go.
Connolly's playing the part.
Yeah, like fucking hell he's playing my part.
What the fuck did you just say to me?
Look, I can use Ryan's sticks.
Neiman, you lost the fucking part.
No, I didn't. Look, you can't fucking do this to me.
Can't?
Yeah.
When did you become a fucking expert on what I can or cannot do, you fucking weepy willow shit sack? Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I'm in studio band because I'm the best
why don't you
player.
just back
Yo,
off, bro?
fuck off, Johnny Utah. Turn my pages, bitch.
I can cut you any fucking time I want.
You would have cut me by now.
Try me, you fucking weasel, or if you make one fucking mistake, one, I will drum your ass back to Nassau where you can turn pages until you graduate or fucking drop out.
That's my part. I'll be on your stage. Fuck.
Andrew has become a near mirror image of Fletcher. While other students cry and hide, he brings the same tenacity, the same rage-fueled drive to his craft, and this drive leads him to disaster. Earlier in the film, Fletcher explains the tragic death of one of his former students, a student who had a story similar to Neiman's, who died in a car accident. And now, on the brink of mental breakdown, Andrew has been driven to the same point. But Neiman refuses to give up, refuses to relinquish his opportunity. But it's too much. Neiman, covered in blood, covered in sweat, and falling in and out of consciousness, destroys his chances of succeeding, purely by being more willing than anyone else to succeed. The irony is paramount, and his failure leads to Neiman fully snapping.
You're done. Sorry.
Shit! I'll fucking kill you! Get off me!
Off me!
Fuck off! Fuck you!
This leads us on to a twist reveal, as we find out the student Fletcher claimed died in a car accident actually committed suicide. After explaining the teaching methods of Fletcher, Neiman moves on to a somewhat normal life. The world becomes a little brighter. He returns to lighter clothes, but deep down, Neiman isn't satisfied. That is, until he runs into Fletcher by chance, and gets invited to perform at a major jazz show. But once again, Fletcher isn't what he seems. As the stage is covered once again in cold, icy blue light, Fletcher reveals his plan, either to embarrass Andrew, or to push him to redeem himself. Either way, the moment is heartbreaking, as we see Neiman flop in front of 300 jazz connoisseurs. But after a hug from his dad, the last remaining piece of himself outside of his drum kit, he begins to walk back on stage. And here we get one of the most beautiful scenes in all of film.
What are you doing?
Andrew takes a seat, and once again, his stage, his life is coated in gold, for Andrew is where he is meant to be. And then we get this. A scene edited and shot to perfection. The final 10 minutes of this film is music in its most simple and most beautiful form. Andrew finally gets his chance, finally takes the reins of his destiny, and gives one of the greatest performances of all time. His father looks on, in either awe or horror, or a twisted mixture of the two, as this man and his drum set sit on stage, covered in that same spotlight from the opening shot of the film. Andrew, now donning full black, completely contrasts his innocent self from the beginning of his story. Completely isolated, without a family, without friends, without his girl, he makes a completed bond with the drum kit, as the two become once again the only thing in his and the audience's world. Because when it comes to the obsessed artist or the obsessed craftsman, their world only contains one thing. Neiman's world is that stage, that room. It's that stool he sits on that gives him life and drives him forward. And no matter how he fails, no matter what tries to stop him, whether it be his family or a speeding truck, whether he ends up dying broke and drunk at 34 just like Charlie Parker did, nothing will ever come between him and his passion, him and his destiny. Him and his obsession. Whiplash is a film with many an interpretation. Some see it as a motivational story, some see it as a cautionary tale. Personally, I see it as an ode to dedication. For when someone is truly passionate, someone has such a connection and seems fated to become truly great, the right thing for that person to do, for the good of themselves and for the good of the world, is to put their all into it. Because yes, obsession can be dangerous, but if it creates the next Charlie Parker, it might just be worth it. So make sure to comment down below and tell me how you interpret Whiplash. And also, if you did enjoy the video, it'd really be appreciated if you could hit like. Also, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn notifications on if you want to see more content like this. With all that being said, I love Whiplash. I've been Joseph, aka Founded Scarab, and I'll see you in the next one.